the meeting. I'm Karen DeMay. I don't think I know everybody in here. And I've only just met the Yorks last time when we kind of began our gathering of cemetery people. Can we do an introduction?
Okay, I'm Nancy Goodnow and I'm on the Town History Committee. I live in Cheshire.
I'm Sharon Hook. I'm on the board for Pine Bank Cemetery in Cheshire.
Donna West on the Town History Team.
Richard West, Town History Team.
Karen DeMay on the town board.
Dennis Brewer, retired director of parks. And I'm on the cemetery committee. I think I will be.
Ray Emery, and I don't know what it is.
Historian Emeritus.
That's-
And Town History Team.
William Churchill, the Yates County History Association and Town of Jerusalem historian.
I know that.
Dave York, Town of Canada.
Cemetery committee duty you have. So on our agenda, the first item is presentations from the history team.
Let me start off.
Right?
Me?
Yeah.
Why?
You start with the Hun Cemetery.
Hun Cemetery?
Hun Cemetery, yeah. We can pass out the brochure so everybody has a copy.
I have some pictures that were taken at the Home Cemetery. Let's pass those around and look at those too if you want.
I gave it back to you. Thanks so much. Are these for?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
yeah. Yeah.
I have two guys in hot meeting, one's in the other room, so excuse me once in a while, I run back and forth.
That way you can be present at both. So this was a dedication last year.
Yes, and this shows all the cemetery. The ones in the stars are those that are veterans.
I would just like to know.
Oh, boy,
Oh, good.
too early for you. This is cool.
This is a nice map.
Yeah.
And you can see that, I can't remember, the number of them are written down in here.
So we invited the history team to come in just to talk a little bit about what they've worked on already in the cemeteries. Our cemetery committee is really a brand new baby here. And so we're taking over a little bit of what has already been worked on, inheriting some of the maintenance that needs to continue to be done. And I thought it would be helpful to get an idea of what the history team has worked on, because you guys have had some really exciting projects and things that are continuing. We also don't want to overlap or have any duplication of work as well. And perhaps we could have an opportunity to partner as we move forward. So I thought it would be helpful for us to, as the cemetery committee brand new, get an idea just of what some of the events the history team has done in the recent history for, in particular, for our cemeteries.
I'll start off.
Start off.
Following Ray's lead, Ray spent quite a bit of time down at Hun Cemetery, starting off the map and documentation, getting the fence put up with the assistance of a Boy Scout, I guess, who's working for his Eagle badge. Wasn't that the case?
Oh, well, yes,
Yeah, okay.
on the whole project, but I can't remember the contractor.
And then the contractor, I guess he donated his time, but he
Yes.
installed the fence. So anyway, on the basis of that, we went down and went through the map, outlined it, moved a few stones not physically move the stones, but move them on the map so we'd have a more accurate layout. And what you have in front of you is the result of that effort. This was just the first one of the cemeteries that we have dived into in order to try and provide some reference. After the dedication, we decided to continue on with that with another cemetery, and so we, unbeknownst to us, we happened to pick the biggest one. And we went down to Academy Cemetery. At Academy Cemetery, we did an overflight with my drone in order to map out the stones. What we had previous to that was, I'll hold it up so people can see. This is what the town has on record for a reference for the stones. We really don't know what stones are there. It's pretty much illegible in spots, which is unfortunate. So we can pass that around if you want to see what that looks like. And what we did is we heard from, were introduced to Kevin Armstrong, and he had been putting the flags of the veterans on his on the cemetery. And this is a compilation of the 4 sections of the map that he had done on an 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. I just put them together and scanned them, and so we have a little bit more reference for the whole thing. And so, what with the drone, we were able to go through and with orange bags, we put them over the headstones, scrape them over the headstones, so that the drone could see them from the air and pick out which was which, and put together a complete map of all the present stones. Now, they designated in small, medium, large, and if they're, I guess if they're small was up to 18 inches, and medium was 18 to 28 inches, and large was greater than 28 inches in width, not in the height. This is in the width of it, just so we have some sort of a reference. So when we're going through, we could see what we had for stones in the position. So this is all accurately laid out. We have gone through, we had a field day there one day, and around this copy of it for people to take a look at it. We had a field day there one day in which I handed out, Donna and I handed out sheets like this where we have 2 rows. We assigned 2 rows, A and B, C and D, E and F. They go through, put their last name, first name, middle initial, born and died dates, not the full date, just the year, because we're not looking for so much accuracy here, because the intention is to go and compile this and put it together with what DAR has and what was already on record. So we just wanted to get a positioning, a number to put with the stones. Everybody got a copy of the rows that we're going across. So we have A, B, C, D. We all go down to blue.
I think it's
AF.
AF.
And then they also got a map, like you see there, of the entire cemetery, so they have a reference as to where they were in their chores. So this is what we had several volunteers come out, and we worked in teams, and we did this. And we accomplished, I guess, through initially. We went through you initially, and Donna went and put all this stuff into was putting that stuff into the spreadsheet in the computer. We went out yesterday to continue on. We did another 6 rows yesterday, so we have 6 rows left in the whole cemetery. We happened to get there at the same time that the landscapers were getting there. The mowers, yeah. And so this is, I didn't know we were gonna have so many, otherwise I would have printed up more copies, but These are pictures that I took yesterday at the cemetery. These are pictures I took yesterday at the cemetery. And I just want to point out that although they seem to be taking precautions in doing their work in the cemetery, they're going through and weed whacking. And then after weed whacking, then they do they still have the zero-turn mowers that goes through there. The fellow on the zero-turn mower seems to be very conscientious about how he was directing the mower, which is good because we have a lot of displaced stones, or had a lot of displaced stones at the cemetery, one of which, the first one on the top left is new since the last time we have been there. That is toppled over because it's shifted, the ground shifted, and it looks like it just went off on itself. One thing I was kind of just made to note though is that one of the veterans' flags that had been put up took a hit, and this is all fresh grass stains, and this is probably from the weed whacker. So there still needs to be some attention to care there. One thing that I was not happy about to see is when we got there, the grass is very long. And as you can see from the picture, especially the top right one on the first page, that's an accumulation from the last time they did their mowing, or whoever did the mowing. And the grass shouldn't be allowed to get to that height, because what happens, you end up with that, because they're not bagging the grass clip. It's being shot out of the chute of the mower and sprayed everywhere. And yes, they went back after they finished and they blew off the stones with the blowers, but still you have this density of grass on the ground there that looks unsightful. So anyway, this is, we have 6 more rows to go. What our intention is that once we have all the documentation that's done is done here, I'll let you talk on that. The other one doing the input.
Rich set up, excuse me, an Excel spreadsheet. And what I did is from these lists that everybody gave us, I input all the information into the Excel spreadsheet. I still have the rows that we did yesterday, obviously. And then what I've done is gone out to find a grave, because there is a link specifically for Academy Cemetery, find a grave link. And so I'm putting that link in the spreadsheet here, because that way somebody, when this will ultimately go on the town website, we hope. Excuse me, somebody can just click on this link, they can go out, if there's a picture there, if there's articles there, they'll be able to see that and, you know, have that information at their fingertips. All the yellow, and I've got quite a bit of yellow, it means that there is some sort of a discrepancy between the information that was on the sheets and what's at the cemetery, or what's on Find a Grave. So at some point, we'll have to go back. And some of the discrepancies are very interesting, because here's one, and I'll just pass this around because I only have this one, is where the names are spelled differently. So we're not going to do research on that. But we'll try to straighten out some of the other discrepancies, see what we can do. I'm not worried about them right now, because there's over 700 stones in Academy. And we're thinking, we're still shaking our head and saying, why did we pick such a big cemetery to do this first, you know? So anyway, it's
you know why we tried.
just in time, huh, Ray? But anyway, it's going to be an ongoing project for a while. And you know, we're doing it when we can. We're volunteers like all of you are. So we get out there when we have some spare time and can do this. So I don't know if you have any questions on this aspect of it.
The hope is that ultimately, by having it in a spreadsheet, we will be able to put it into a database, port it over to a database, which can then be put onto the town website, so that people have a central reference, a central point to go. They can type in a name, They can put in a range of dates or whatever, and they'll be able to find, they'll get where cemetery they're in and where the stone is. There'll be a map like this on the website. They'll have the links for the find a grave there. We're not taking individual pictures of stones because find a grave already has those. And that is an art in itself to taking pictures of the stones. You need, in a lot of cases, you need a reflector, to bounce light back into it so you can get the shadows build up on there, or get into rubbings and this sort of thing. And if it's rubbings, then you've got to go and scan those in order to get, something that you can present.
One thing we have realized though, and especially seeing the mowing yesterday, is that the fact that previous mowers have not blown off, done any blowing, that grass is on the stones and stays there. And there's a lot of lichen that then forms and you can't read the information on it. Now, Sarah Linda, who's our co-chair along with Ray on the history team, she has worked closely with the DAR and had sent us a listing that the DAR did. I'm not sure how long ago it was. I didn't bring the list with me. What they did when they did their list is they used numbers for the rows. And we did letters for the rows because that's usually the way you find them in a cemetery. It's easier to have A1, A17, or B3, whatever. Sounds like bingo.
We have numbers.
You have numbers?
We
Yeah.
do numbers.
But we just felt it was easier to use the letters. And when we had the field day, Rich had printed up letters and we put them along the chain link fence so that everybody would know what row they were in when they were doing, their assigned rows, yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of stones where you can't read the information, even with the reflector, because of, all the lichen that's built up on there over time.
The grass
So-
clippings tend to stay there, then they form moisture so that the lichen can build on that and it shakes.
We found, I'm trying to think of the name of it, and I can't. Ron Mullen found this
Solution.
solution. And you put it on like in the fall when it's gonna be rainy and snowing. You just put it on and you forget it. And the rain and the snow and all, and you may have to reapply, but we've cleaned up all the stones, even the old ones, like you said,
Nice.
that, and it really works.
Nice.
Well,
Last-
I know
last year-
Leaf had given me some information on what solution to use and
And this
working
is,
with
this is
Peter
okay for
Ellison.
animals, for anything. You don't have to
The
worry
last year I
about.
was here, I bought some of the solution.
Okay,
Never got to use it. They're like two gallons, which I left behind. I'm not sure whatever happened to it. It's extremely expensive. But it was pretty easy to just
Yeah,
wipe it
they
on
just-
and then it.
They just spray it on.
And
The
then
guys
all
go
I needed
through
was
and.
a rain and it would clear it up.
Mhm.
We never did use it, but I did buy some of the solution. I got it at a place off Henrietta Road or someplace.
yeah, and Leaf has the name of something too that he had sent to me. Excuse me, I went out and looked at it. We haven't purchased any of it for our own, personal use for our parents' graves, but
Ultimately,
No, it really works.
good, that's good
We
to
hope
know.
to be able to put together a brochure on Academy Cemetery too, but because of the size of it, which is significantly larger than Fun Cemetery.
This one.
That one.
It's unlikely that we'd be able to put a map per se on the brochure. So the idea is to put a letter designation along the fence, have permanent plaques or whatever on the chain link fence. And that way people would have a listing on the brochure of the person and the stone number. And that way they would have a reference and they could walk out and see it. They could also access it, if it's on the database on the town, they'd be able to bring up a map of the cemetery and reference that if they can get Wi-Fi or cellular data on their phone.
And maybe even have a QR code that we would put someplace on the Academy Cemetery sign. So people could access that and it would link in with the town. Because what Rich did when he put this together is he shaded the rows. Because at Hun, the rows are pretty uneven. So just so that people would know and find it easier how we tracked the names to put on the back as far as what row they were in. He would do the same thing with the Academy map as well, because there are a few stones that are kind of like offset. You look down a row and you might see one in the middle. So it's like, okay, well, what row is that one going to be designated to?
Yeah.
So.
Well, once we finish with the recording of all the stones, what we like to do is get together with DAR and other entities that have had an interest in this in the past, and decide, okay, what does everybody want to see on a database as far as fields, as far as information that would be searchable, and then sit down, decide what we want there, and then have somebody put the database together. We do have somebody, we know somebody that is knowledgeable in Microsoft Access, but is that the best one for the purposes? Is there something that would be more friendly for a database on a website? So there's still a lot of questions to ask, a lot of work ahead of us yet, and being the biggest cemetery, we have a little bit of time. It's going to take us to get it all done.
That's not big.
As well, it's not big, when you kind of compare it to Woodlawn,
Do
no.
you know Doug Stoll?
Definitely Woodlawn Cemetery. Do you guys have anything digital like that?
Yeah, we transferred everything over to computer. As far as a database, everything's in Excel.
Okay,
Because technically the newer burials were cause of death. Sometimes they'll still put on their suicide or whatever. It's borderline whether you can share that information online. So we have a large database that has all the information. And then I just pick out the rows that I want to upload to PDF, so you can get right on our site and print the whole thing out if you wanted to. And it's just all alphabetical by last name. But it's nice to be in Excel because for inter-office activity, somebody will say, hey, how many people are in section 26 or how many veterans or what's this, and I can sort by that. We did look into cemetery software this is way back, and it just wasn't beneficial to us. I do CAD software, so I do mapping, and we just do the Excel because it's easy. You can sort and filter. So in the winter, I usually do the remapping for the whole pencil drawing maps. But that's nice because I can go right out there, and there's nothing better than snapping a line and measuring exactly where everything is, and then when it gets mapped to the inch.
that's why we did it by drone.
Yeah.
Didn't want to have to go out and snap, because after, with Hun Cemetery, going out there and some of the stones are, originally drawn, weren't, because we went back out several times to verify the rough position. Hun isn't down to the, to the foot or the inch or whatever as far as location. And I just felt that the easiest way, the fastest way would be to do it with a drone. But when you have trees, then you have a little bit of a problem. And Academy Cemetery has two nice big pine trees that not only provide shade and cover and everything else, but apparently a couple of them must have been planted alongside the grave, because now we've got several gravestones that are displaced, and we don't know if the tree pushed them aside or tossed them, whatever. But that's when you have to go back and manually put it in.
And I'm sure that the DAR database list that we have will help us with some of that as well. But I had spotted just, I don't know, it was just kind of a freakish thing that I spotted the first time I took that book out there. I noticed a couple errors as far as what row the person was in. So that's why we'll kind of compare. If we can't read some of the information, we'll go to, I'll go to the DAR list and work with that.
Yeah.
to-
It's gonna be a compilation of input from a lot of different people to get something that we can present. And I agree with you as far as the amount of information you do present.
Correct.
All we're doing is just putting a name, last name, first name, this sort of thing, dates.
Yep.
You know, how they died is irrelevant. If it's in, find a grave, they've got that part. We don't want to get into any point where we might have to worry about illegal
Yeah,
legalities.
we're talking old cemeteries, anyway, which usually out to 75 years, and then you can release whatever you want. I mean, you're not too far off from what we do anyway. So the find a grave stuff is nice. I don't know how many people are find a grave contributors. But it's only as good as the information you get off the stone. And even in modern times, we have people come back and say, that's not her last name, that she didn't get along with her husband. Put her name and that's a true story.
Well, we've seen that at Academy too, that there's,
Consorts or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as a cemetery, when we do our data information, it's off the transit permit or the burial permit. So even though they didn't like their past brother-in-law, I'm gonna put her sister's name back to her maiden name, can't do it. So it's a legal document, but those are things you're gonna run into. Discrepancies. Your records may say, hey, it was 1897, but says she died in 1896. Well, it was probably in December and they held her to March. So there's a lot of different variables.
Well, we came across one yesterday where there was the stone and then there was one that was in the grass more, flat. And the birth was.
the family stone, and then you have
And
the
then
individual.
the birth year was different. It was a year off from one to the other, and they were like basically right next to each other.
So I figured it
So-
must have been born at midnight,
Yeah, right.
December 31st, and they just torn as to which year they want to.
Somebody's
put it.
watching or somebody else.
How old they wanted to be.
But we also, I don't know if somebody knows this, can answer this, the lower right-hand picture on the first page. That is a round plaque and it says OT, it's hard to read on this picture. It's KOTI or something like that. Or-
It's not, I don't know if it's a veteran plat or whatever, but we saw two of them
Yeah.
at the cemetery.
And then they both had a line and then 168 underneath it. Did you folks get a copies?
No, is it?
I don't think there's enough to go around.
KOTC,
That's a.
Oh,
is it?
Knights of
Knights of, yeah, I was just
KOCT.
thinking,
There's
there was
was that an
Knights of
extra one
something
there, or is that for
that they
the
belong to.
Order of the Knights.
Yeah, Knights of
Oh,
something.
okay.
It could have been anything.
Yeah,
Whatever
we
they
didn't,
belong to.
yeah, we just happened upon two of them yesterday, not that we were
Yeah.
looking for them, but.
Well, one final comment is that when we first got there, in some spots, the weed whackers hadn't quite got all the stones. And there's one, like, almost, I think it's in the first or second row, right up front there, where there are three flags in front of a large stone. It designates as a company or whatever. I don't think you know it.
Right.
And those flags are all upright. When we went back after on our way out, after the mowers had been there, one of the flags had been clipped off and broken on the stone. It was lying on its side. And we found that in a couple of them. And that's usually like from the weed whacking. My comment is that when we went through, there was flowers that had been knocked over that were not put back up. There were flags that were lying on the ground that had been displaced by the weed whackers. They hadn't stuck them back in the ground again. they have a job to do, yes, but they have it, they also have a responsibility, in my mind,
Well,
to put things back the way they found them.
that's the problem with leaving the flags in
Yeah,
instead of going the next day, take them back out and put them back in for the next.
but if you're weed whacking and you hit something and you break something or you displace something, what does it take to bend over
Fix it.
and put it and turn it back into where it's supposed to? Or if there's a vase of flowers or whatever, like we found, that's been tipped over as a result of their efforts, what does it take to upright? Because you have to remember, there's going to be people coming back there to visit these graves. And I'm sure that they want to like to see things the way they left them.
I agree with you about maintenance, because I mentioned it at the last meeting, especially the blowing off of the dead grass and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I went around to some of the cemeteries on Wednesday or something, and the grass was like that. And then I went around yesterday or Saturday, and I'd seen they'd been mowed, but before that, the grass was also
What,
Yeah, they were doing academy like yesterday. When we were
what is
there.
the contract call for as far as interval between mowing? Is it once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month? I don't know, but the grass is very long when we got there. It's probably, like
The
that.
contract is actually not a time, it's a size of the grass, so the grass can be it's supposed to be no higher than 3 inches. And that requires the lawn to be mowed, so that in August, when it's dry and the grass isn't mowing, they're not coming every week
Right.
just to get those mows in. We base it on how high the grass is, which is difficult. We don't wanna go out there with a ruler and,
Right,
put it on
but
the ground, but at the same time,
the
there's an
higher
expectation.
the higher it is, though, the more
Exactly.
idea you're gonna have clumping and
Exactly.
that sort of thing, and then it looks unsightly. And
It
because
sounds
you
like the same
can't really expect them
water.
to bag all this stuff. That's a little bit much. Yes.
A question for you. I belong to the DAR. And I'm, I'll register for the Untitled Chapter, and I've been trying to locate all the Revolutionary War veterans in Yates County for 2026. And I find that there are a lot of men who have no grave marker. And I believe we can't get the plaques anymore. Did you find many of the military that did not have any recognition?
I think there was a couple, there was a couple that had no flags on.
Yeah. I found 1 or 2 in the cemetery that I had. But
And we
I
found,
had missed them.
yeah, and we found spots where there's a depression in the soil where they may have been a stone before, it's not there now. There's one on Academy where there's a huge, bush or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It's right in line
it's a
with all the
peony.
other stones, and this position would almost be like it was the shrub or whatever was planted in front of a stone at one time, like you might find in a cemetery, a small little shrub that has overtaken everything, but I couldn't find, digging down, separating, not digging down, and separating it, I couldn't see any reference of a stone there. But, the fact that there was a depression in the dirt there, it makes you think that perhaps at one time there was a stone there.
Yeah, it's a big peony bush
Yeah.
that has obviously grown over time.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Find a Grave for a moment. Arlene Reeves, the Ontario County Museum, Historical Society, whatever, they have a genealogy society, and evidently women go in there, I don't know, 1 or 2 days a
Amen.
week or whatever.
And men.
Pardon me?
And
And
men.
men, okay, I'm sorry. And they answer requests. And so when I've been doing the Find a Grave link here, Arlene has put a lot of little articles up. They're newspaper clippings that she has put up. They've
Mhm.
copied and put up on the site. So that's helpful too. It's kind of interesting to read some of the stories, like somebody fell out of his buggy and hit his head and died,
Mhm.
just, but she's been doing this, and So the whole group, I guess, is, they answer requests and so they've been very helpful, with some of the information that's on there too. Because then if I haven't been able to read the year, if it says it in the article, then I can put it in the database. Where a lot of times the year's not even there and the clipping doesn't have the date of, of the article, from the newspaper itself.
Yeah, I'm
So-
finding a lot of
Are you?
obituaries in the papers that were left in our house. But they just cut out the obituary and no heading on the newspaper or anything, so there's no date on it.
Yeah, and if it's not in the article, then you're
Yeah,
SOL.
yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing we did yesterday, thanks to Ray and everybody that planted flags, we went around and circled the individual stones on our map, so we know where those flags go. We don't know if they're revolutionary or World War I, World War II, Korea, whatever. We don't know. We can't assume by the dates that somebody that that's there might not have served in Korea as well as World War II, this sort of thing. There may be an overlap. So we still have to have that information to tie in. But at least now we have a knowledge. We'll have knowledge as to what stones require the without having to hunt for them. Where the flags have to go. Yes.
Have you seen this? It's a layout of every war and every cemetery.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, no.
No.
And to your point, I'm not sure that we saw many of, you're talking about the brass markers. I don't think we saw
I don't-
many, or if any, I don't
think
recall
there-
seeing
I
any
think
of
there was
those.
just one there from that I remember.
They happen to get recycled.
They what?
Unfortunately, they get recycled.
Oh,
They're not a permanent marker at the stone.
The ones that are adhered to the back of the stone.
Yeah, those are.
yeah, those are the big plaques.
Because I know
There's
that
one on-
Bowden Hill Cemetery, where Donna's folks are interred, there's a permanent one there, brass marker that you stick a flag in.
Yeah,
And then my dad has one in the cemetery back in Massachusetts. He has.
yeah, they're just stuck in,
They're stuck in and there's a flag in
flag
there.
goes in,
Yeah.
but yeah, they end up, disappearing and maybe putting, and I found in some of the cemeteries that maybe the person putting the flags didn't know where they're, and they would put the flag holder at the wrong marker. Okay, no, that's really, and two, the thing is that I have found also that if you have some of these nice stones that are recognized, they disappear. And
Really?
so, yeah, and that's,
Oh,
but we've got a lot of
Wow.
little cemeteries that I would like to have, because many of our cemeteries in Yates don't have signs. Even though they're there. But once you advertise, then, are you letting yourself open for having them disappear, because we've seen quite a few old ones gone.
Wow,
From
that's a
the
shame.
Friend and that era.
I guess it's a matter of where they, how often the caretaker's there. I mean, I know at Bowden Hill, the caretaker lives right on the front of the
So that's
property.
right, yeah.
And at my folks' cemetery, like in Massachusetts, that's a town cemetery. And they have a crew that actually has their offices and their maintenance shed there. So they're there
There's a
every
presence
day,
there.
work day, as opposed to like the Academy Cemetery, where there's a fellow that lives across the street, but it's not his job to watch over the cemetery. So I guess it's a big difference as to how the management is. So,
I know some cemeteries have regulations about what you can bring and put in the ground, make it easier. Some can't bring anything, they just wanna run across with their zero turns and that, but I'm assuming that these historical cemeteries don't have anything like that. And since they don't, is it in the proposals for the maintenance, the grass cutters, to say, hey, you gotta move everything that people brought there, pick up the flower pots, pull the flags out, and then cut it, blow it off. You know, is I wonder if that's spelled out in their contracts or their proposals.
I don't know, and see, what we found too, not this time, but the previous time we were there, we found a stone about this big chisel. When I finished pulling back the grass that had grown over it, it was like this big. And the problem is with with the cutter that just comes in and mows, the grass is still gonna grow over it, much like it would on the edging of your patios or whatever. So it's, somebody has to go out there at some point and cut back so the stone is still visible. I don't know if it's possible to lift those stones up, put a new base there, so the stone itself would be elevated above the grass. I know that some cemeteries, when my dad died, my brother and I went out looking to find where we're gonna place them. And one cemetery we found, they only permit flat stones flush with the dirt, because they want to be able to make it so that the mowers can just rip across those things and take care of it. And, but unless you keep the grass back so you can find the stone, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have people have those monuments and everything else, but it does take more work to keep them clear.
Whether it's, should have a stone border around them or something.
Yeah, hey, well, we saw a couple of, I guess, a new form, a new base, it looked like it had been poured and it didn't have a stone on it yet. So I don't know if that's, if somebody's doing maintenance on that and elevating it to get it up so it wasn't down. Like I said, we didn't take pictures except of all the stones except by shot yesterday and previous when we went through the cemetery.
Yeah, one of them that had toppled over, it was like a couple layers, and then the top part had toppled over. And when you looked at the part that was left in the base, it looked like it was just glued or something. So it's like after time, over time, no wonder.
Somebody repaired it.
Yeah, I mean,
But the-
if it
but
was
the base
just.
itself was tilted because of ground issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more question. The newer stones here, some, that one for Monroe and that, is that like, who provides that? I mean, what's the story behind those newer stones that, I mean,
I don't know, we just, we just matched it.
Yeah.
I one like, I don't have any pictures there.
That was actually gonna be one of my questions, how many new stones are going into these cemeteries? And
Well-
who's responsible for the footer?
I have
We
no
have-
idea.
Yeah, that one.
That's
would be
where
the town
cemetery committee
question.
comes
That's
in.
actually a really great segue, because we have our chapter 45 cemeteries and monuments pulled up. This is the avenue through which the cemetery committee can begin to govern those types of decisions. Prior to this adopted in the end of May, the town of Canandaigua actually had no regulations for the cemeteries, not even when they were open or closed or anything like that. So this is a really just the beginning, I would say, of a document that we can begin to develop to try to make those determinations and to govern that direction, exactly who's responsible, what type of events can be held, what types of, bases or headstones or any types of equipments can be placed in the cemetery. This is actually going to be our avenue for that. That'll be this chapter 45 of cemeteries and monuments. And thank you guys so much, Richard and Donna, for everything you guys have done so far and all your volunteer time. You've really spent a lot of time in our cemeteries and helping and really clearly care so much about making sure that they're well preserved, which is also one of the tasks that the cemetery committee has. And I think that's a great segue into the next section of our agenda, which would be just to quickly review this local law so that the committee can begin to identify some goals. Now, I know we're really a young committee, but I think in order to stay organized and to be able to actually address some of the different ideas that we have, it'll be helpful to identify some goals for the year and So I think if we take a look back at the local law and just identify what real intent and purpose is behind the law, it could be helpful as we begin to create a couple of goals for the year. Karen also had asked me to bring up some financial information as well, so we can definitely, you want me to continue to
Oh, yes.
move in this discussion? Absolutely. So with the,
Well, before we go on, is there anything else the history people want to add, or?
Is there a way to share your screen so that I can see it too?
yep, absolutely. I can do that.
Thank you.
We're on the, let me just make sure I know where my mouse is. Here it is. Can you see that, Mary?
I can, thank you.
One thing that we talked about at our history team last week was that a couple of the cemeteries, because Ray has documented them all and they're all listed on the town website, is he had mentioned about ownership issue at Sand Hill and also at Remington, how that's not publicly available because of the private road driveway that goes into there. So we haven't.
Pine Bank is another one.
What about Pine Bank?
Oh, it's not owned by.
It's not.
Right, I know.
But it's
Right.
access.
Right, but Sand Hill, you mentioned that there was an ownership issue with Sand Hill.
Well, yeah, because there's still burials to be done. And that's, most of them are abandoned.
Oh, most of the sites in Sand Hill?
Most of the sites and any of the other
Oh, okay,
cemeteries are abandoned.
okay,
So,
I think Sand Hill and Academy, you can still have burials, right?
yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
and
Pine Bank.
Pine Bank.
Mm.
Yeah, we got that.
Right, we're not overseeing that.
Yeah, Sand Hill and Academy, we
we're
don't
mowing.
sell
We're
plots,
mowing.
but there are still
Oh, the
vacant
contract is
plots that
mowing.
can be buried in. And then Pine Bank is the only cemetery that is currently selling plots in town.
Yeah.
Right.
So you said in Academy, you can still bury people there, but you're not
Correct.
selling plots?
Correct.
Oh,
we
Yeah,
wanna
if they
keep
so-
them in.
so they
They
would have
already
already
have
have
a family
purchased
plot.
They
Yeah,
have,
okay.
they
already have
purchased
one.
it previously.
Okay.
And they
If
have
they can
their
prove it.
documentation and they
Interesting.
show that they then can be, when
Right.
that person passes away, they can still be
Mm.
buried in
Okay.
that.
And and Remington Cemetery, which is the one off of Knott Road. Rich is thinking that when the leaves are off the trees in the fall, he needs to get in there and do a drone picture of that.
That'd be great.
So we can document that, although Leaf has said there's a lot of depressions in that one too. That he
Maybe
was
GPR
wondering
might be
about
good.
GPR for that
Do you use
cemetery.
GPR in Woodlawn? How do you verify old graves that may not have markers on them?
We have very, very, very good records.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna look to you for some advice on.
we know where everything.
Good.
That's our problem. We don't know where everybody is. That's why we
Yeah.
started the new cemetery.
Right.
And said, unless you have already bought a plot in the old one, nobody else is being there because we have run into problems. So we just canceled it out and started a new one.
Wow.
And then the new one, we had an engineer come in, draw the lines, so we know
Yep.
where everybody is.
Are they primary on your side of
Yeah.
the road?
Just on my side, yeah. Yeah. About 2 acres we own there, I think, 2 or 3, can't remember exactly.
And is that still open? for
Oh, yeah.
Purchase?
Shall we move on to the laws?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest pieces that overlaps with the cemetery committee is in letter B, number 4, to increase public awareness of the value and develop participate in educational programs. I think this overlaps very much with the goals and the mission statement of the history team to preserve local history and encourage public awareness. So I think that could absolutely be an avenue where I see the cemetery committee and the history team partnering together, accessing both of our different budgets and allowing us to really develop some fun educational programs with some interesting new ideas for that as well. In addition to that overlap, the cemetery committee in particular is also, we are, as I said before, govern the activities and functions of operation and maintenance. So the West have talked to us a little today about some of the different issues they have come across in the cemeteries in regard to maintenance and in particular landscaping, lawn care, and that type of thing. So I think that's really important to keep in mind as well as we go forward. The cemetery committee is tasked with developing that. So we could look at the request and the contract that was sent out this year. It was developed from last year, and perhaps we could look at redeveloping that going into 2023 for some different particular ideas that the committee has going forward. Also to interpret the history and honor the history of the town of Canandaigua with preserving the burial grounds. Leaf brought in for us earlier today. Peter Ellison is someone we've worked with for a long time now. Ray, did you initially bring Peter in, or was
Yes.
that even prior to your time? Yes.
No,
And maybe you could speak a little to what Peter's done so far in the cemeteries.
everything.
Well, in particular, preservation.
Yeah, the way we used to do it. And I think that Leaf has some different ideas, but it's fine. Peter and I would take, go to all the cemeteries and note all the stones that were broken or laid down. And from that, he would decide how many he could do in the year. And usually it would be about 10 or 12 maybe that he could, where they're located, and to make it easier for him. And we would give him the money out of our budget. It was usually about $5,000, and we try to keep them to $5,000 or less. And he would do what work he could do for that price.
And did that entail cleaning some of the ones that were really bad, or fixing the stones that had fallen?
All stones that needed to be replaced, repaired, or removed.
Oh.
But he don't do anything about, let me think about that. Cleaning.
Okay.
Didn't do any cleaning. That would be up to the owners, or how do you do it, Doug? I know Barbara's going down and clean her family.
Yeah, so the cemetery doesn't provide that service for us. Headstones are personal property. It just so happens I do it as a side gig, so that's a little conflict of interest, but we had so many requests for people, asking how do you clean them, how do you do this, how you do that. So for years, we'd say get some mild Clorox mix, get on your hands and knees and scrub, but people, they just can't get them clean. So I did some research and got into the cleaning, and I provide that services on my own. But as far as the cemetery, no, we cannot deal with personal property.
Doing it on your own, do you have to have liability insurance, everything else?
I don't. It's a handshake and a smile.
The old fashioned way.
Yeah,
Well,
and I use
Which comes
Public
first?
property now.
smile.
Oh, okay.
That's
Good
a
smile.
handshake. no, it's all environmentally safe. Stuff that I use, so.
Yeah, because if families aren't in the area anymore, or there are no relatives left, if it's an end of the line, then there isn't anybody to take care of them.
Right, and I mean, I don't wanna get off on the agenda here, but you bring up a very good point when you say liability, just for me as a personally doing it, if you do damage a stone, which I never have. The same thing comes about with this committee. If you're out there and you hired somebody to fix a stone, or you're out there cleaning it or fixing it yourself, what is the liability of this board, this committee? Because you're actually dealing with somebody's personal property. Now, from what I'm gathering, these families are probably long gone and they would love you fixing their stone. But it would just be some of these more modern ones that I'm seeing. You know, the topple over stones is nothing new. Back 100 years ago, they went this far with foundations, so the frost is just popping everything up every year. We fix them every year as well. Normally, we dig and pour a new foundation. Because in our case, just like Pine Bank, who is regulated by the state of New York, we have rules, and those foundations have to be as deep as the grave. So back in the day when they went like this, no more, where ours, they're minimal 4 feet deep.
Right.
So they're not moving anymore. But it is our responsibility as a cemetery, you install those, whether it was in 1920, I have to fix it, no cost to anybody, except for us. So in a roundabout way, you know, that's why I asked earlier, who's responsible for these foundations in the town cemetery? Stuff like that, that I'm sure will come out as we discuss.
Absolutely. They're public property now. They're owned by the town of Canandaigua. So the headstones themselves are no longer private property when the cemetery association becomes the property of the town of Canandaigua. So on behalf of the town, the cemetery committee can enter and clean the stones and that type of thing without having to concern for liability. And that is specific though to the town of Canandaigua cemeteries, and what we talked about last, and there are a handful of finding a few on private property that we don't have that type of a situation with, but we can definitely communicate about that as we go.
So you'd be putting in new foundations 4 feet deep as
I don't know,
required?
I guess if the
As
committee
required?
decides they wanna do that with our budgets each year, that's certainly not out of the question, but I don't believe we're still required by the state because they are not active cemeteries. I don't believe we're required to continue to maintain them in that way. Part of
There's
moving
not
this
many
along,
people
there's a very small
looking
bar
for you
for what
to
we have to
do
do
it.
as the town.
They're
really just
gone.
know it.
Most of
But going forward, you would have to.
There's no requirement to do that, but in an active cemetery, there is.
This proposal here, of course, it's proposed to the town of Canandaigua. Who makes is that the historical committee or?
So this proposal is kind of a bridge, I would say. Previously, the historian has always been the point of contact for preservation and maintenance in the cemeteries. So previous to the committee being created, the historian is the one who worked with Mr. Allison to determine which types of preservation would be made. Leaf has made the proposal this year based on what he's seen in the cemeteries as far as what is in need, most in need of fixing currently to get it through next winter without it really deteriorating and breaking down. And then going forward, I believe the idea is that the cemetery committee would be developing this list of maintenance items.
Does the historical committee have a budget?
The history team, you guys have a small
We have a very
budget.
small budget. Yeah, I think it's what, $2,500?
unless we have this, a contract to do a larger one. Like Katie used to do for.
Oh, yes, yeah,
you know,
with the grant.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but other than
Yeah.
that,
Other than that,
probably 2,500.
Yeah, I-
Probably.
That covers printing expenses and this sort of thing for
Right.
Yeah.
The cemeteries actually have a bit larger budget,
Yeah.
especially this year in particular as well. We know when this was
5,000?
coming, put a little bit more, 20. this
20?
year. Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
I
Leaf mentioned
still
that.
don't think I retired too.
We knew we were going to be working on this committee, so we wanted to move that forward. So part of that budget this year is for Peter Ellison to do preservation. Part of that budget is an agreement we have with Pine Bank Cemetery to continue to contribute a shared service agreement with Pine Bank to help keep them solvent and maintained.
5,000.
Yep, that one keeps going. And then there's another small piece of, I guess, each piece of that kind of breaks down. We can dig into that a little further. I think that's actually, Karen, do you want me to pull that up? We can go right into that.
Sure. Does Pine Bank maintain their mowing with the same person? Oh,
That's by contract
Yeah,
each year, I think.
right,
yes.
I didn't know if they did it separate.
So this is our 2022 budget. We break it down by budget details. So each one of these, you have the full account of 21,200, and then each of the particular line items break down to a certain amount. So you can see there are some small burial costs at Academy that, as I said, there are still some sites there that have been sold. So we do have to put a small amount in each year to make sure that can be taken care of. The town has to open that grave site. Then we have the committee, some grant services here. As we discussed, one of the items in our local law is to try to obtain grants to help us with different larger scale projects in the cemeteries, as well as repairs, materials. You can see there a line item for Peter Ellison, our line item for Pine Bank. And then it looks like there's a request from the history team right here, actually got put in this one for cemetery education. So what a great time for you guys to be here today to take a look at that together. Now, historically, we have, I have a little history details, spent a little bit less each year. This is 2019, 2020, and 2021. So previous to, I think it was 2021, we would pay directly for the landscaping at Pine Bank, but we made that change where we contribute to Pine Bank in one large sum, and then they determine how that gets used. We've also, as you can see here in 2019, spent quite a bit on Hun Cemetery. We put in the fencing, the flagpole for that event that was held, and I think, was it a new sign too? And then we've done gate repair. So that is one thing we have to keep in mind. This is also the line for maintenance items at the cemeteries. So if they, a gate breaks or a fence needs to be repaired, that's also where this would come from. And previously we've bought flags and things like that as well. So you can see in 2022, we've only used about 5,100 so far. That was the flags and then the contribution. So there is quite a bit still remaining. And the proposal from Peter Ellison, I think, would be a way to take a look at preservation. If everyone is comfortable with the suggestions that Leaf has made for this year to do, we can move forward with those while the timing, the weather is accurate for Peter to work on those throughout the summer. And then I think I would encourage the committee to develop another list for next year as we continue to work with Peter on that type of work. Another thing Peter has offered for us also is to do trainings and clinics. So Peter has come out and he'll show you how to identify what type of stone it is. Our cemeteries have a lot of different types of stones in them based on their age. And so you repair them differently based on what they're made of, as well as some different types of repairs and materials that he uses. So I think that's also a great opportunity for education, and maybe even with Doug, we could do a half preservation, half cleaning type clinic and have some people maybe gather some volunteers and increase public awareness. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for us with the budget that we have and the people that we have available resource-wise.
Does he work alone?
He does.
Yes.
If,
At home.
if the team, if your committee doesn't spend all of that money in 2021, can you encumber it?
You can
So
only
you don't
encumber
lose it?
funds if they're contracted.
Okay,
So
yeah,
if we
that's.
have like a contract with Peter to do a certain amount of work that doesn't get done,
Mhm.
we can roll those funds over. But we can't roll funds over that aren't in contract. Those would have to go to the fund balance and then we would adopt our next budget for next year. So that is something to begin thinking about, as crazy as it is. I hate to tell you, but I just got the budget calendar the other day. So June, July, August timeframe, we will be developing a budget for 23. So I think that's also important to think about as we move forward, what types of projects we want to do so that we have the budget for next year in order to do that, just in case it doesn't get done this year.
So spend it.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
I know that from being treasurer of our historical society down in Jersey. We had to encumber it with the town, so you didn't lose it.
Right.
Otherwise, they wouldn't give you as big a budget the next year. So,
That's not always the case. We're very, very flexible with our projects. If you don't lose it, if you don't use it, we
Yeah.
redevelop the budget for what we're gonna do next year, right?
Who?
Right, right,
Who?
right?
Kate, do we have a copy of that budget? Did you give it to us before?
I did not, I can definitely send it out. I didn't
Yeah.
send out the budget because I just ran it real quick from Encode, but I can definitely send it out. And then the budget for current year is on the town's adopted budget.
Oh,
I just pulled that one line from it. So you can see this year's budget and budget detail right on the website and in the town's budget.
So aside from this, I know in past, Eagle Scouts have taken on different cemetery projects and clearing bush and finding them. I mean, is that the kind of group that would be,
We have to go to them and
yeah,
ask them if they would like to.
oh, yeah,
Preston Pierce
Yep.
is the one that usually gets a, did you work with the scouts?
yeah.
yeah. And I have an Eagle son, so I remember that routine, but or a youth group or, a reliable youth group.
Mhm.
And then can you budget feeding them after project day? I mean, this kind of thing is possible.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
The younger you are, the better you are. Bending over and all.
Yeah.
That would be great, or like
The
a
more
football
food
team
you
maybe.
need.
You get a football team to come in.
and it gives them a better appreciation for history and,
Yeah.
you know,
That's,
so, you hope, yes, yeah.
There are other avenues, you can get inmates from Ontario County to help out with clearing.
Yeah, we did.
You can get, the ARC has a program,
Painted the
it's
fence.
actually funded by New York. That they'll pay for 90 days for somebody to work. So it doesn't come out of the budget.
Wow.
You mean full-time?
Well, this particular gentleman that was to us was he couldn't do any more than 25 hours a week because it would interfere with other funds that he was receiving. But 25 hours a week is quite a bit
Mhm.
for free. 90 days that they gave. But I don't know how that would work with the town or the slash committee, but I can provide you with a contact on that.
BOCES will be involved in some projects. I know we used them in the past. Some of the students from Flint.
make a college summer interns too.
Yeah.
Well, I know. It's the work.
Yeah, so there's different avenues for assistance. work-wise.
So if you guys are comfortable, we'll move forward with proposing Peter Ellison's work for this year. That way we can give him the okay, give him the green light to move forward. If you guys are comfortable with
Just
that.
work with the town.
Can I ask a question about this? We haven't been approved by the town board yet, right? Officially. I mean, can we still-
Officially, we're on the
can we
agenda
still
for the
make that
13th.
decision, or-
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We
Pending
In
approval.
anticipation, right? It's got that little asterisk on the
Yeah.
back of our activity, but yes, I think we can definitely, if we are encouraging, moving forward with it. I think that would be beneficial to help him keep working through this year, and then, like I said, next year, we can take a look, throughout this year at what he's working on, and then identify going forward for next year, what needs to be done as well.
He does carry insurance, so I mean, if he fell.
Yes,
Peter does, yes,
Yeah, he
Peter
does.
is an independent contractor, so he provides the town with all of the required documentation for that.
Well. We need a motion, an unofficial motion.
Sure, let's do it.
Yes.
So moved.
second,
It's official as, we're not even established, but yep.
oh, approved.
Oh,
We won't tell them.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Got that?
So our budget is,
Pretty generous for this year.
It is compared to.
Compared
Compared
to
to
past
past.
years, yeah, it's pretty generous, and I think I think the intention was to fund the committee, as I said before, and as we move forward, I think there will also be some generous funding for us. The largest line item you see there is grant services, which I'm not sure
Good.
if we want to start working through that this year, if we even are ready to start working through that. I think it might be beneficial to get a little bit more familiar with our cemeteries before we dig into really the details of what we want to do for a grant. But I think it's a great time to start thinking about it and making connections. I think, Alan, you could definitely be a great resource for us in connection with the DAR and different programs that might be available as we go forward. So if we start to think about some goals for 2022, we're kind of halfway through the year, but I think if there is anything that really jumps out to anyone as far as right now in the discussion we've had today, what's kind of been done so far and what needs to be done, is there anything that really jumps out to anyone as far as something you could see us accomplishing this year?
I think everyone should have a tour of the cemetery.
I love your thinking. I love your thinking.
I'm not a good one to do it, but I think it would be good to see each of the cemeteries. Because
So rather than coming here for a meeting, we should probably do a couple cemeteries at the
Yeah.
next one.
couple north and couple south.
Yeah.
You know, as I said at the last meeting, the tree committee, tree team, also makes visits to the cemeteries, and on the 20th, I know it's a holiday, but on the 20th, the tree team is going to visit Tilton, Cooley, Sand Hill, the Peanut Line. That has nothing to do with
The north-
cemeteries.
the
but we're
north-
That
going
hits
by
all
it.
three northern cemeteries, though, that hits all three in the north.
Yeah, we hit all, and we're meeting at 5:30 at the parking lot by building number 100 at Richard Outhouse Park. So that's on the 20th, 5:30,
June 20th.
June 20th.
I won't be able to come.
Because the tree team has been going to all the cemeteries and all the parks. We've already visited, this year we visited Lucas and Academy.
I noticed yesterday when we were at Academy, there's, on one of the trees, there's a branch, a dead branch, I think that's really low. That I don't know what you're gonna be doing
I think
at
probably that's
Academy,
something we
but
already put in the last minute.
yeah.
If you go to the town website, under tree team, there's a list of all the cemeteries and parks we visited and
Oh,
our recommendations for problems or whatever, that type of thing. So go back to Academy and see what we put down for that.
okay, good, good. So
Would-
you're
would
meeting
you-
where? At Outhouse
We're gonna
Park?
meet it just in the parking lot. Again, in the parking lot by the building at Richard Outhouse. right across the road from the new playground.
I haven't been to the playground recently.
Hasn't been open yet. Not gonna be open till
I haven't
this
been to any of the playgrounds
Oh.
recently.
What date was that?
year. 220.
June 12th.
Why is it a holiday? If you don't mind my asking.
Juneteenth.
Okay.
But the
So would you-
committee members, there's only a few of us, committee members decided that would be a good time to meet, because we usually meet on the second Monday, but the board is meeting on the second Monday, so we look.
Now, would you recommend the removal of any trees from the cemeteries?
We list trees that we feel should be removed, yes. Suggestions of limbs that are hanging or that type of things.
And I think it might be part of this committee to decide yea or nay.
It is, yes, I think the tree team's list will come to this committee as far as the ideas for the cemetery. And then we'll facilitate that work being done, either partnering with the Highway and Parks Department or hiring a contractor if need be. Or maybe shooting it back to the tree team. Don't you have some arborists on that team?
We do, they're excellent,
Very, very knowledgeable.
very knowledgeable.
Okay, well. Aside from June 20th,
Yeah, so in thinking about touring, would there be a preference? I know you said you can't make that on the 20th. Would you prefer that for the committee members that we do it in the morning? Or if we did it in the evening, would there be a preference for anyone committee wise?
What time?
Well, if we did it at our meeting time, it would be 9 AM.
Oh, that's all right.
Or if we did it, we could do it in the evening, maybe like a 4 or 5 o'clock type. I know Doug, you probably have some restrictions with work and stuff like that. Would you have a preference if we maybe met at a cemetery? Would that work okay?
Yeah, really, you're restricted.
Okay.
Would you do just a couple at a time, or would you, I was gonna say, it's
Yeah, I
gonna be
think
a
if we try to do them
long
all,
night.
we have an all-day meeting, right?
I'm probably prefer during work hours.
Gotcha.
It works, seems like the mornings are good. for me.
so if you're looking at July, the 4th is Monday.
Yeah, that would be
So
ours.
do you
Yeah.
do the 5th or the 11th?
Is there a consensus? Would either one work better?
I don't know.
Is anyone out of town for the 4th?
No.
Dave and you, are you guys around?
We're fine, yeah.
So you want to do the 5th, is that what you're saying? Yeah. Sure, Tuesday the 5th,
Of July.
right,
What time? 9 AM?
9 AM.
Can history team members join you?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
anyone is always welcome to join us.
Absolutely.
It's a public.
More the merrier.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
this would be a tour of,
Do you wanna, there's the three will have recently gotten information from the tree team on the 3 northern ones.
right,
Do you wanna do that? I think that'll be easiest if we do that, just quick loop north from here. Do
Yeah,
the 3 northern cemeteries.
yeah. The south will be a little longer.
Yeah, maybe the south we split into 2 and 2.
Yeah.
Cause they're
so
bigger,
the 3 northern are Tilton, Cooley.
and Sand Hill.
Sand Hill.
So which one would you meet at?
What would be easiest? Or we can carpool. Do you wanna
Doesn't
meet
matter,
at the
we can-
cemetery or do you wanna carpool?
Which are we talking about, the 20th or some other time?
The 5th.
The 5th at 9
Oh, the 5th?
Yeah.
What do we have to visit on the 5th?
The same 3 you guys will visit.
Oh,
with
okay,
the
you're going
tree
back to
team.
the 3, we are, but we haven't included Remington yet. Remington, we have to be careful with because it's landlocked and we just have a easement and they're a little sensitive even about the easement as far as people walking up there. Basically, they kind of asked just for the maintenance people, so.
So if we
So
go
we
to
have to-
that one, we'd have to carpool in order to minimize the number of cars.
Yeah.
You really want a carpool, I mean, for instance, like Lucas, you know, you don't want a whole bunch of cars parking along 21, so. So we try to carpool, although there's not that many of us, but So if
I
you
think
have-
that's a good suggestion. If you want, why don't we meet here at town hall? We'll see how many people we have and then we can even do
Maybe
like a town
determine-
car too.
That's a good
If we
idea.
need to and carpool, because Cooley and Tilton too are very similar, where they're just
Right.
right, tiny little spots on the side of the
Yeah.
road.
So
So,
we're gonna
I
do
think
those
that'll
on the
be-
20th, and we'll probably carpool for those.
okay, so why don't we meet here? Does that work for you, Karen?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll meet here and then we'll decide how to carpool and we'll hit those 3 cemeteries on July 5th at 9 AM.
That's good.
And did you want to take a look out a little further, just because you said there were a few holidays coming up for our meeting schedule here?
Sure. Well, August, I'm in California
That would be August 1st.
visiting my arborist son.
Oh, nice.
Oh, there you go.
Nice. Do you want to do August 8th that month?
I think I'm still.
So
No,
maybe
I'm
we
back.
look
I'm
at-
back on August 8th.
You're back on the 8th?
Yeah.
Does that work for everyone to do August 8th instead of August 1st?
Sure. Well, wait, yeah, that's still.
That's still a Monday, yeah, it's just the month, the second Monday instead of the first.
Wait,
I'll just have 2 meetings, I think.
And
Especially for
that,
hours.
So you would
that'd
do a
be 9
tour
o'clock at
then?
town hall?
Or a meeting?
Yeah, can we do another tour?
Yeah, I'd like to do another tour so we can get to all the cemeteries. So I'll try to coordinate, what I was trying to think of too was that maybe we can meet Peter Ellison at one of the cemeteries. And he can show us some of the work he's done and then show us kind of how he does and get familiar with him. And I think he works a lot at Pond, might be good to focus on Pond that day and maybe another one of the southern.
Yeah, I'm not sure. whether we'll be able to do
Lucas,
that.
Yeah.
maybe Hun and Lucas are both like kind of close by. So let's not nail it down quite yet, which cemeteries we'll do, but I'll reach out to Peter, see if that works for him timing wise, and then we'll pick from there. I'll let you guys know which ones we'll be at with that one.
for the 8th
Yeah, for August 8th at 9 AM.
of August.
And then the September meeting overlaps Labor Day.
Yeah, that's.
My only concern is that look at this and if we're basing meetings on, which absolutely we need to tour and assess these cemeteries. But now we're getting to September and we still really haven't done anything for cemetery.
It's getting too late to make improvements or whatever.
So this is just me personally, I'm probably gonna go visit these over the weekend, during the week. But I want to be part of the tours, I'm just thinking. as
I'm
we get
trying
to
not to
September,
put too much of our volunteers' time, but I am totally down with a separate date in July for more tours, so we can get these things moving along. If you guys are willing, I don't wanna take up too much of, I know you're all volunteers and I don't want to take too much of your time, but if the committee wants to do that, I definitely think it'd be beneficial,
But we get an overview of all the cemeteries as soon as possible, and you can decide what you're gonna do. Time you have left for the weather to be conducive.
absolutely.
Yeah, it might
I
be
mean,
easier to set your goals that way. you know.
Realistically, if you wanted to work at 2 or 3 hours, you could visit all the cemeteries in a
Yes.
period of time. The tree team doesn't meet until the evening, 5:30, 6 o'clock, so we don't have the opportunity to go to all of them because of darkness, although the days are longer now. But we could realistically, forget the 20th and just have a meeting or no more than 2 meetings and visit all the cemeteries as a cemetery committee and historical committee. And forget about going along with the tree team and let the tree team also, because we could just give a report on trees.
Right.
We don't give a
Your focus is
report on
different.
stone conditions or anything else.
So if you do 4 and 4, at least on those tours.
There are 7. Well, we should go to find that, right?
Yeah.
I've never really had a tour of that cemetery myself.
We've
Take a
done
while.
geocaching there.
Anytime.
Do you have a tour guide, Sharon?
What?
Do you have a tour guide?
No.
We're gonna be the tour guide.
It's you. I'm the one that watches over the cemetery and make sure things don't get walked away.
So we could go to Tilton, Cooley, Sand Hill, Hun. And then we could go to Lucas and Academy and we can't really go to.
Make arrangements.
It's the one on that.
Yeah, the one on that road is one, you know, we don't want a whole group of people
Mm.
wandering up there. We only want a couple of people, 3 people wandering up there, so we
Yeah,
don't
they don't like.
upset the neighbors.
So.
They don't want.
I mean,
How do
realistically,
you get to that? Whose driveway?
Yeah,
you park along the road.
You
walk
park
up.
along, you walk through,
Yeah, who's, okay.
It's- it says
Read-
Pettinger,
rephrase it.
Pettinger. at the-
I don't
Whose
know.
property may, we walk across and I get shot?
Doesn't matter.
Because I saw there's
No,
a driveway.
There's a
there's
white house,
garage.
there's a long driveway, there's
Yeah.
a white house, and there's some areas here. I
yeah,
believe this house has been sold, but the lady that used to live there, she was wonderful. She didn't care. She loved to have people look at the cemetery. But
Pettingers, I think.
someone else has come along who's been a little tough on us as far as.
yeah.
Are you
how many
talking about-
people Up there and
I
equipment.
haven't
One on that
found
road.
those.
Yeah, but
Okay.
access from Middle Cheshire or access from Knott Road?
It's not.
Not road,
Yeah.
not road.
Yeah, so you go up around.
I thought Pettingers lived up there.
Yeah.
It does.
They
does.
do.
Yeah.
But you see, the thing is, the parking situation there, we've been told
Yeah, it's a
that,
parking situation on car, because there's a
Right.
driveway that goes this way, then there's a barn and another driveway over this way. So they're
Doesn't want
different
to walk.
owners.
Oh, I didn't
So
realize
you
that.
just have to be careful as, I don't even know exactly where the dotted road is that we can walk up, the dotted line is that we can walk up.
Bring a paint spray can.
we should
Do
probably
we
clear.
want to, so we've got, so on July 5th at 9, we'll do Tilton, Cooley, Sand Hill and Han. Do we want to move the August 8th at 9, where we have the other ones up to July, or even between now and our July 5th meeting? So that we can get there more quickly?
Well, the sooner you get an overview, the better.
If we kind of eliminate Remington as far as the whole group going, then we will only have 6. We could almost throw in, I don't know how much time you're willing to give in the morning or whatever. I mean, we realistically could go from Hun and go down to Lucas and Academy.
Yeah.
We could knock off all of them if you want to go early enough on the July 5th. You want to start at 9 o'clock or whatever. There might even be enough budget for us to stop and have coffee or something.
Restaurant break.
I mean, it's up to you folks, you know, if you want to put down like 2 hours or whatever, we could hit all of them.
And we probably wouldn't go to Wolverton, the,
No, you
No,
can't, you
you
can't
can't,
go there anyway.
because, yeah,
That's.
because that's on, I've got your list right on the website.
I have some pictures of Wolverton.
Well, then
Oh,
let's
yeah.
just try to do that all on July 5th.
Okay,
The pictures of Wolverton, you know, Ray certainly was instrumental in getting that taken care of. There's some pictures of before and then some. after
Was,
that.
was that a scout project
That was the
also?
scout project. What was the boy's name?
That's-
I can't remember his name now. Josh, was it Josh?
Jay's Dutcher's son, Jay Dutcher,
Oh.
or John,
Josh, I think his
Josh
name,
Dutcher.
they live adjacent to the.
They live on Whitehall's Road.
Oh, okay.
That's basically the only way you're gonna be able to
Just
see it.
walk across the,
So when you're on Westlake Road and you go up Weifels, turn right onto Weifels, what side of the road is the cemetery on?
Can't see
the
it, it's all
north,
back in the
north,
hills.
you can't see.
Yeah, I know you
the
can't see it, but
north side.
it's not left or right, on the right, oh, okay.
Can you get through it? Can you go up to the city Water?
No.
Do you see, this is,
I'm the same way.
See,
She turns a mess.
see,
Oh,
Sharon's
there
the
we go.
same
I'm the
way.
same way.
that's,
But I
this
just
is
knew
the
that.
property where Wilburton is.
Oh.
So you've got the property on 16, but see how it's behind White Rose, it's behind.
Oh, my gosh,
Yeah.
wow.
But you can't go up the city water towers and walk down?
No.
I think
I don't
we
know.
would need to speak to the landowner.
Yeah.
And the city towers are blocked with an access. So you would need probably a little bit of permission for a few different areas. The city, the towers, the city, and then we have an agreement with the towns there, and then that large parcel is owned by Mr. John Casey, who's definitely willing to work with us.
Could you
We've-
put-
we've talked
He's
to him
on
about
one of
this,
the
but he
boards.
just doesn't, it's not
Hmm?
open.
Can you put your cursor right where the cemetery is?
Maybe it would raise assistance.
Oh my gosh, they did a great job. The thing is, if Wolverton's not maintained, it's gonna grow back to what it was like before, isn't it?
Yeah, but
It'll just
John,
disappear.
I think John is sensitive to keeping that the way it is, so I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been some discussion of access from the property, you see how.
See,
we're
there is-
Yeah.
This
So
whole
there
thing,
is some
or
discussion.
this, I think it's just so. But this is just in the, oh, there it is, I think. Right
Those are
about
great
here,
pictures.
because it's. This is the town
The
line.
scout that did it didn't live very far away from the cemetery.
Pardon?
Well, that must have been in Jacob's backyard.
It's in his backyard. We
Yeah.
parked in when it was done, we parked in his
No.
driveway.
Oh, yeah.
I was-
That's neat. Shows the
Those are
before
great
and after.
pictures, Dennis.
Very good.
Yeah.
Right about.
Nice cleanup.
Quite a change. though.
Boy, I'll say, yes.
That one whole section we don't want.
Alright, so we're meeting on the
You're the one that
fifth
knows.
at 9 a.m. We'll aim to get as many cemeteries as we can that day. Cross your fingers for no rain.
This is.
Hopefully it'll be a beautiful
Do
day.
we have a,
Are you gonna send all this information?
I'll
out
send it
this-
out,
All
yeah.
right, so,
And I'll
so
put it on
if-
the town's website too. We'll create a meeting for the cemetery committee.
so on the fifth, if we're going to visit all the cemeteries, then what are we gonna do on the eighth? We have a regular meeting here at 9. is it?
We'll decide based on how many we get to on the fifth.
Oh, okay.
From there, I think that's better. Maybe we'll do another day to get to a few if we don't get to them all. And then perhaps we'll have some better ideas of what we want to do.
Maybe some agenda items that come up.
Yeah,
between now
I think there
and
definitely will. As you guys get out and see the cemeteries, you'll definitely come up with
Come up with
ideas.
some idea. Yeah, definitely.
And we're
And we-
still gonna meet here at the town hall?
Yeah, we'll meet here at the town hall,
At
little
9.
carpool.
Okay.
Yep.
Walk across,
And
so
Oh, I'm sorry, so
No,
I just.
we have
wanted
to
to-
That's
determine.
fine.
budget sometime, right, until September
we're
or-
being
And
in
we'll
a corner,
discuss,
so I
yeah.
can't.
I'll
Because
have,
behind
when we
me,
come up to like,
but we
then
know
we'll
the
know what our
family
budget
buried
meeting
them.
is for this
Oh,
committee, so that we can
There's no
have some
stones,
ideas for
and
that.
some stones were thrown
Let
up
the
the
night
night.
catch.
Yes.
We don't.
Because when we did a
All
geocache,
right,
if you have to go through the
Anything
cemetery,
else?
first of all, you have to,
are we falling apart?
I can't think what his name is, he used to run
You're
the,
taking up enough time.
You
Mary,
unofficially.
are you
pharmacy
joining us on the
over
fifth?
on, West
You
Street,
would've
I think
said.
it is, or
Mary's
West
on
Avenue.
Zoom.
Yeah.
I can't think of it, but he goes by medicine man, he's geocaching. And so you have to go to a bunch of the stones.
Unofficially.
And they're all under the pine trees, he said, and you have to find like your birth years, your death years.